is a fun and super easy craft you can do. I'm taking a frame from the Dollar Tree and I'm just going to pop the backing off of it. And once I remove the backing, there is an extra layer in here, and I am going to keep all of these pieces and just set them aside for a few minutes. Next, we're going to take this frame and place it on a paintable surface. And I do use a little bit of painter's tape just to help secure my frame down to my surface. Next, I grab my Waverly chalk paint in the color Sage, and we are just going to go ahead and do a nice coat of paint over the top of this frame. And once that dries, I do grab my Folk Art Satin in color number 2198. And I just do a quick dry brush over the top of the sage color, so you'll still see the sage and you'll still see a little bit of that gold. Now, once you're satisfied with the green, I went ahead and let that dry for a minute. Then I grab my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster. And all we're going to do is do another dry brush over the top of the two different green paints. Now, once everything is dry, we're just going to put everything back together. Now it's time to embellish our frame. I found these little hangers from Walmart for 98 cents, and I just love them. So I'm just going to take the little hanger off of this piece, and we're going to add that to the center of our frame. And once we have that glue to our frame, I did take a little bit more hot glue and I filled in the hole that was at the top of this hanger, and we're just going to add a little bow to the top. Now here is our finished piece. I just love how this turns out. I think this is one of my favorite pieces for the day. It was so easy to make, but I just love the contrast of that black and the green. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And if you're enjoying this content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button below. It really helps my channel grow. Thank you. This craft starts out with some foam rollers from the Dollar Tree. And I decided to use these green foam rollers because they were just a little bit skinnier than the pink ones, but the pink ones would work great as well. And you're just going to shape them into a candy cane. For this first candy cane, I am going to use this rope from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to unwrap it. And we're just going to use one of those strands on that rope. Now let's go ahead and take one of those strands and a little bit of hot glue, and I'm going to wrap that around our candy cane. I'm going to continue doing that, and every inch or so I'll add a little bit more hot glue and continue to wrap. And this next step is completely optional, but I like to take a lighter and I just burn any of that extra frizz off of our rope. Now let's give this candy cane some stripes. I'm going to use some of these berry garlands, and I'm starting out with some red berry garland. And I did get this at the Dollar Tree, but sometimes if you can't find it there, I have seen it at Hobby Lobby. I found it on Amazon as well. So it kind of is hit or miss of whether or not you'll be able to find that. And now I just took a little bit of hot glue at the bottom of that candy cane, and I'm just going to wrap some of those berries all the way around my candy cane. Now let's go ahead and repeat that step with some white berry garland. And now our adorable candy cane is complete. I just love how this turns out. It's such a rustic piece you can hang on a tree or put on a tiered tray. Now for our next candy cane, we're going to start out with that same foam roller, and this time I'm going to be using some of that thick chunky yarn for my white, and then I'm going to use a thinner yarn for my red. We'll start out with that white chunky yarn, and using some hot glue at the bottom there, we're just going to attach that yarn and then wrap that all the way up our candy cane. now that we have our candy cane all wrapped up, I am wanting to cover those little plastic caps on the roller, so I'm just going to cut 2 little pieces of yarn and take some hot glue and cover those up. Now let's grab our red yarn, and I believe I got this yarn at Ben Franklin, and I'm just going to cut a piece about a yard in length. And I'm going to take that piece, and then one of the ends I'm going to just kind of stuff and hide in that white yarn, and I'm going to hot glue that into place. Now all we have to do is wrap that red yarn all the way around our candy cane. And periodically I will add a little bit of hot glue once I'm satisfied with my placement of the yarn. And now our fluffy candy cane is ready to hang. This is perfect for a tree, but could also be used on a tiered tray. Now for our third candy cane, I am going to be using this checkered ribbon that I found at Hobby Lobby, and I got this on the 50% off. Now I'm going to just take this ribbon and I'm going to unwrap it a little bit, and I think I unwrapped about 2.5 yards. I probably should have measured it, but I found that it was easier to wrap this around the candy cane when it wasn't on the spool of ribbon. I'm just taking some hot glue, and I actually hot glued this right to the bottom of the roller there so that I could cover those little white caps, and I just started wrapping that ribbon all the way around our candy cane. Now we could just leave our little candy cane like this, but I wanted to add a little bow, so I just used a little bit of hot glue and added a twine finger bow to the top. And now this candy cane is complete, and I just love the rustic feel to this candy cane. It is so pretty. Now I would love to hear from you guys. Which one of these candy canes do you like best? Do you like number 1, number 2, or number 3? Please drop a note in the comments below. Jingle Bells is a classic Christmas song, and it is one of my favorite. I found this printable on the internet, and I just printed it out. It's just a piece of sheet music for Jingle Bells. And I'm using this wood piece from the Dollar Tree in the shape of a house, and I'm taking my pencil and I'm just going to draw the shape around the sheet music. Then I grab a pair of scissors, and I'm just going to trim this piece of sheet music up into the shape of a house. Now, using a tea bag and a little bit of warm water, I am going to take that tea bag and just rub that over the top of our sheet music. And this is one of my favorite techniques that I learned from Sammy over at Unicorn Dust and Design. So thank you, Sammy, for showing this to us. So this technique allows us to just lightly stain or weather our sheet music. Now, while the sheet music is still wet, I am going to just do a little tear mark around the outside edges of this piece of paper. And once you are done with the edges on this sheet music, I'm going to go ahead and lift this up and put this on a sheet pan. And I'm putting this into an oven at 275 degrees for about 10 minutes. Then just go ahead and pull this out of the oven and let it cool. I love these grapevine wreaths, and I am going to use one of them in this project. I did get mine from Hobby Lobby, but I have seen them at other locations as well, at Michael's or at Joann's Fabric. So I'm taking this piece of wired bells, and these wired bells I did get at the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to wrap them around our wreath. Now here is what our wreath looks like with all of the bells. I think this is so pretty, and it goes well with Jingle Bells. So I'm using this little house wood shape from the Dollar Tree, and this one was painted black already, and we're just going to leave it the way it is. Next, I'm going to go ahead and grab my Mod Podge, and using my Mod Podge painting brush, and I really like these brushes, so I plug them a lot, but they are amazing. So if you're interested in them, I'll put them in my description box below. But I'm just going to paint the back side of the sheet music so that we'll be able to lay this onto our piece of wood. And once we have that in place, I'm going to use my roller here and just roll everything down to make sure it's nice and smooth. And then to seal everything in, I did take this outside and using my Rust-Oleum matte clear enamel, I sprayed this down. And now for the finishing touches. Let's go ahead and hot glue that wreath onto the front of our piece. And for our final step, I'm just going to hot glue a little black bow to the top of our wreath. And now our adorable Jingle Bell shelf sitter is ready to display. I just love how this turns out. It is such a fun classic piece. For this craft, I'm starting out with a blank that I got from Hobby Lobby, a tree blank from Dollar Tree, and a sign from Walmart. And I'm taking my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster, and I'm just going to do a light coat over the top of this blank. It was a little bit too white for my walls, and I want to put this up in my living room, so I'm just toning that down. Now, while that piece is drying, I go back to my little tree here, and I'm just going to remove the hanger from this tree. Next, I grab my hot glue gun, and what I'm going to do here is I'm taking my hot glue gun and I'm just going to add some designs to my tree. And there's no rhyme or reason. You can do whatever designs you would like. I'm doing a little bit of a swag on mine. And once you are done, just let that dry for a few minutes. And I am taking some of these dot stickers that I got from the Dollar Tree. And I didn't want to use the hot glue to make little dots, so I decided to use these dot stickers instead because I wanted them to all be somewhat uniformed on my tree. So that is why I'm doing that. But you don't have to use those stickers. You could just use your hot glue and make dots yourself. And if you don't want dots, you can just totally not do that as well. You can do it however you like. And a nice thing about these dots, or you could use hot glue, you can cover that hole at the top of the tree so nobody will see it. And now that we have everything attached to our tree, I'm grabbing my Aleene's tacky glue and I'm just going to add that to the top of this tree. And now that I have some of that glue on the tree, I'm going to grab a paintbrush here and I'm just going to paint the glue over the top of everything. I'm going to grab some aluminum foil. Yes, aluminum foil. And I'm going to tear a sheet off bigger than the tree. And this aluminum foil is just the regular size aluminum foil. It's not the heavy aluminum foil. So all I'm going to do here is I'm laying this foil over the top of the tree and I'm lightly pressing it down with my hands. Next, I'm going to grab a paintbrush, and this is more of one of the circle paintbrushes that you would use for dry brushing. And I am going to take that brush and just tap down all the way around on this tree so that you can see all of the lines and the dots that we put underneath. And I just love the detail this gives our piece. I think this makes it look so amazing. Next, I'm going to go ahead and grab some paint here. And this is some multi-surface acrylic paint, and it is in satin, and it's number 2918. Now, all we're going to do is paint our tree. Once our paint has completely dried, I grab my Waverly wax in the color white. I'm taking a lint-free cloth and I'm just going to apply that wax over the top of our paint. Now, once I am satisfied with the wax, I'm going to let this dry overnight. The next day, I went with my zip sander and I'm going to sand in a downward motion to remove any of that aluminum foil. And if you don't have a zip sander, a sanding block would work just fine. Another thing you could do is if you had a cutting board, you could lay this down and just trim around it with a razor blade really carefully. Now here is what our tree looks like when everything has been removed. I am loving this look. Let's go back to the board we painted earlier, and this was set up to be hung horizontally, and for this piece I want to hang it vertically. So I'm just going to remove one of the sides of the string and then reattach that string to the board so I'm able to hang it vertically using my staple gun. And now that we have our board and our tree prepped, I grabbed this hanger that I found at Walmart. These hangers are amazing. They're 98 cents. They're really easy to craft with. I've also used them on tiered trays or set them up on my shelf. So all I'm doing here is I'm just going to hot glue a little dot to cover that hole so we can hang this onto our sign. And now for the fun part. I'm using some Tite Bond Quick and Thick, and I'm going to put that on the back side of my tree here with a little bit of hot glue. And then I'm just going to add that to our blank. By using the hot glue with the Quick and Thick, you're going to get the short-term quick hold with the hot glue, and then that Quick and Thick is going to give you that long-standing hold that you want. I'm just going to repeat the same steps with this small little Merry Christmas sign, and I'm placing that just right under the tree. And now for our final embellishment, I am adding a bow to the top of our tree. If you like that ribbon, I did get that at Walmart this year. Now here is what our final sign looks like. I just love how this turns out. I cannot wait to hang this in my living room to display for Christmas. Let me know what you guys think. Would you try this foiling technique? This craft is starting out with some wood ornaments from the Dollar Tree and some toilet paper. Yeah, that's right, toilet paper. So what we're going to do with this toilet paper is I'm just going to tear off some of the sheets of the toilet paper and just add them to a little bowl. Once we filled our bowl, I'm taking my Delta Creative Luxe Metallic White Paint, and I'm just going to add that to the top of the toilet paper. And I probably put about a tablespoon and a half in there when I was all done with putting my paint in. Next, I'm going to add a little bit of water, and I'm going to stir this up with a paintbrush until it is to the consistency that I would like. Now, this technique works well with any acrylic paint, so you can use any color that you'd like. I've really been enjoying these Luxe Metallic paints from Delta Creative. They have like a shimmer of sparkle to them, but it's not overpowering, so it's not like a sparkle paint. And it's a creamier white. I'd say it's more of a soft white, and I just really like the look. So once we have our paint to our consistency we would like, I go ahead and tape down one of these ornaments to a paintable surface, and using my paintbrush, I'm just going to spread this paint over the top of the ornament. And this is more of a set down the paint onto it, or like you're spooning it from your paintbrush, and then you're just tapping that down into place. So then everything is nice, and it gives this amazing texture by having that toilet paper in there. And once we complete the first ornament, I'm going to go ahead and repeat this step on my other two ornaments. And I find by taping these ornaments down onto a little piece of cardboard, this makes it a lot easier because this is going to take overnight to dry. So what I'm able to do once I've added this paint to each one of these ornaments is I can just take that piece of cardboard and lift it lightly and move it to somewhere to dry while I'm working on other projects. And while the paint is still wet, I do take my little Cricut tool here, and this is just the pokey tool that you use for weeding, and I'm just going to poke that into the hole where the ornament would be hung from, because I want to make sure that the paint doesn't dry and fill that hole in. Now let's go ahead and set these aside for 24 hours to completely dry. So now that everything is dried, I do want to put a few little highlights around the edges of these ornaments. And I'm using my Delta Creative Luxe Metallic Silver and my Folk Art Sugar Metallic Meteorite. And now we're going to just dry brush a little bit of that paint on the outside edges of these ornaments. And now once the paint has dried, I'm taking some black satin ribbon and I'm just going to go ahead and tie some little hangers onto these ornaments. And now that we have our hanger, for our last finishing touch, I'm taking some sheer silver ribbon and making little bows. And I'm just going to hot glue a little bow to the top of our ornament. And now our trio of ornaments is complete, and I just love how these turned out. The toilet paper really elevates these ornaments in a way that you would never expect. So I would love to hear from you guys today. I am from Washington State, so where are you guys watching from? Let me know in the comments below. I love browsing the thrift store for dishes to decoupage, and this dish did not disappoint. I found this at St. Vincent's, and after I was done getting this all nice and clean, I am going to grab a holiday napkin. And this fun napkin is from Amazon, so I'll leave a link for it in my description box below. The first thing we're going to do is prep our napkin, and I do this by removing the back 2 layers of the napkin from the napkin. Now going back to our dish, I'm placing this on a piece of cardboard, and using some painter's tape, I'm going to tape the dish down, upside down to the piece of cardboard. And now that our dish is secured to the cardboard, I'm going to grab the napkin and I'm going to flip it over and placing it face side down on top of the back side of the dish. And I just want to make sure it's positioned in a way that it covers the entire dish. Now using my matte Mod Podge, I'm just going to brush that over the top of the napkin very lightly. And I'm going to continue to apply the Mod Podge until the napkin is adhered to the whole back side of this dish. Now once you're done applying the Mod Podge, this is what it looks like. And what I do here is I'm just going to let this sit for about an hour until it crusts over looking like this. And when you flip the dish over, you're going to notice that it's a little bit dull on the napkin, but that is okay. Now next I'm going to grab my Waverly chalk paint in the color white, and using a paintbrush, I'm just going to paint over the dried area of the Mod Podge. And after I started painting, I realized I didn't do a second coat of Mod Podge, and I know that sometimes I do that. So that's kind of up to you. It's an optional step, but I felt like this piece, I don't think it really needed it. I think that the paint was good after that first coat of Mod Podge. Now once that paint has completely dried, I did grab my zip sander, but you could use a sanding block, and I'm just going to sand off any excess paper from the dish. And I always find sanding in a downward motion works a little bit better. Now, once all of that paper is removed, this is what our dish looks like. So you can see that it really brightened up with that white paint. Now, next, I am going to re-tape this dish down, and I am going to do what's called a reverse decoupage, where I am going to take another item to decoupage over the top of that white paint. And for this step, I am using some tissue paper, and I want to say a quick thank you to all of those that voted on my community page on which tissue paper I should use. I
I really appreciate it. Sometimes I get stuck in these videos and I forget, like, well, what do I want to do? I just don't know. I can't make a decision. So thank you guys for helping me out. So what I'm doing here is I take my Mod Podge and I'm actually going to apply a coat of the matte Mod Podge over the top of the painted area, and I do the whole entire dish. Some people would do this in sections, but I just went for it and did the whole dish. It's not that big of a piece, so I felt like I could do this while it was still wet. And then once I've coated this with Mod Podge completely, I'm going to take that piece of tissue paper, and this tissue paper did come from Walmart, and I am going to take a little piece of cling wrap, and I'm going to put a piece of cling wrap over the top of the tissue paper. And I am this time putting the back side down, so the nicer side of the tissue paper is what's going to show on the outside of this dish. Now using that cling wrap, I'm going to smooth out everything onto the dish. And once I'm satisfied, I'm just going to gently remove that cling wrap. And then I'm going to let this dry for at least an hour or two. Do not touch it, just leave it alone. And now that everything is dry, I grab my dishwasher safe Mod Podge. And we're going to just do a nice coat of Mod Podge over the top of that tissue paper. And once we're done coating this dish with the Mod Podge, we'll go ahead and let this set aside to dry again. And once everything is dry, you can remove it from the cardboard and grab your zip sander to remove any excess paper. And once you have all of that paper removed, if you notice anything lifting, you can go back with the Mod Podge, and I would use the dishwasher safe one and just lightly paintbrush that down. Now, once you're done with all of that, here is what our dish looks like. I just love how this turns out. And this will make a great candy dish or knick-knack dish, or all by itself. Just let it display and show everybody what you made. I just love this dish. Let me know what you guys think of this reverse decoupage. Is this something you would try? If so, leave a Christmas tree emoji down in the comments below. For this craft, we're starting out with a wood wreath from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to remove the tag on this. And next, I'm going to place this down on a paintable surface, and I'm going to use my Waverly Antique Wax to stain this ring. And to do this, I am going to paint this with the wax using a paintbrush, and then taking a baby wipe, I'm going to wipe everything down. And once I'm satisfied with the stain, I'm going to just go ahead and leave this set aside to dry. So I found this metal sign from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to go ahead and take it and put it on a paintable surface. And I'm using some painter's tape to tape it down so it's a little bit easier to paint. Next, I grab my multi-surface folk art paint in the color Licorice, and I'm going to go ahead and paint this joy sign. And this ended up needing 2 coats to cover everything completely. Now, going back to our wood ring, I found this adorable ribbon at Hobby Lobby, and it's kind of like a crackling effect. It starts with brown, and then there's white over the top, so you see a little bit of brown flecks and a little bit of off-white. I'm going to take this ribbon, and I'm going to wrap it around my wreath, kind of in the center of the wreath. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I do 2 layers of the ribbon because I want a nice thick ribbon around the side. And then I just unwrap this a little bit so I'm able to go ahead and use my hot glue. And I'll use my little makeup applicator here to just tack down this ribbon. So now that our ribbon is attached, I am going to add some picks. And this pick I got from Walmart, and we're just going to use 2 sprigs off of this pick. Next, I'm just going to position everything on my ribbon
And I'm not going to tack anything down yet because I want to be able to move things around before I decide where I want to put things. And I'm just going to add those picks into that ribbon and leaving enough room in the center there. I'm going to make sure I have room for that joy sign. And since I'm happy where everything's at, I'll just add a little bit of hot glue to make sure everything stays into place. Now let's go ahead and hot glue that joy sign right to the center. Now, once our joy sign is in the center of our piece, I found this sheer black ribbon and I'm going to use it to make a hanger. And once we have our hanger in place, I did grab a little bit more of that ribbon and added a small bow. Then all I had to do was trim a little bit of that ribbon to even everything out, and our piece was complete. I love how this wreath form turns out. It is such a simple wreath, but it is so much fun to make. I think this would be a great wreath that you could do with friends as a group project. And if you're enjoying these projects, please consider hitting that subscribe button below. It really helps my channel grow. Thank you. We're going to start this craft out with a wood ornament from the Dollar Tree. And I'm taking a little piece of painter's tape and I'm just going to paint that down on top of a paintable surface. And using my plaster paint from Waverly, we're going to give a nice thick coat of paint on this little ornament. Now I'm going to grab some truffle paint and Waverly chalk paint, and I'm going to use that just for the little trunk on this tree. And now for the top of this tree, I'm going to use some ribbon that I did get at Walmart, and I'm going to cut two pieces about the same length. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to loop around the first piece, and I'm going to hot glue that in a little loop. So we're going to take some hot glue and just attach that together and set that aside. And then I'm going to grab a piece of gold ribbon. It's just a really thin piece of gold ribbon, and I'm going to use that to tie my little bow together. So I'm just going to fold that and make a little bow and squish everything together in the center. And then you'll grab that piece of gold ribbon and just wrap that around and tie a really tight knot on the back side of this bow. Next, we're going to fluff our bow out as best as we can, and I'm going to take some scissors and I'm going to cut off any excess gold ribbon and cut some dovetails on the end of my bow. And now that our bow is complete, we can take a little piece of hot glue and hot glue that to the top of our mini tree. And then we can just set this tree aside, and we're going to add that to our project here in a few minutes. So I have this sign from the Dollar Tree, and you can find a lot of different ones like this for many different seasons. And I'm going to go ahead and repurpose this sign. I'm starting out with measuring the inside square. And once I know the inside square, which was 5 by 5, and you can just cut scrapbooking paper for this, but I wanted to do something a little bit different. So this is some faux leather that I got from Craftier, and it's a fun craft website. And I'm just going to go ahead and cut this in a 5 by 5 square. You can also find the faux leather sometimes at Dollar Tree, but typically it's in solid colors and not in a pattern. To attach this faux leather, I'm using a glue stick. And once I've placed that into my sign, to make sure it's secure, I'm using one of my scraping tools, and I got this from the Dollar Tree, but Cricut makes one as well. Next, I'm looking on the back side of my sign to make sure where the hanger was, because I do not want to accidentally do this upside down. I've done that in the past and I've learned my lesson, so don't make the same mistake. Now I grabbed some nautical rope and some hot glue, and I'm going to go ahead and hot glue some nautical rope on the inside of the square. And I just want to make sure that this really gets nice and tight inside the square. So I'm using my little makeup tool here to just help press the rope into the corner of this sign. And now that our rope is secure, I grab a Jenga block and I'm going to go ahead and hot glue that to the center of our sign. Now we're going to add a little bit of hot glue onto the top of that Jenga block, and we're going to grab that tree that we made earlier and just add that to the center of our sign. And this is how our lovely sign turned out. I love it. It's so cozy. So this is one of my favorite crafts. I actually did this last year, and I do have a video that I'll link up here. It's not great, but it is one of my first videos that I did do on YouTube. So I wanted to redo this craft for this video. I'm starting out with these wood blocks that I got at the Dollar Tree, and I'm drilling a hole inside the center of that top block. And we're not going all the way through, we're just going down about a ½ inch. Next, I'm going to use a razor blade, and I'm just going to scrape a little bit of the plastic off of the bottom of this tree to make sure it fits nice and secure into that block. Now we're going to take this wood block and put it on a paintable surface, and using some Waverly antique wax, we'll stain the block. And while that block is drying, let's grab some ribbon, and you can use any ribbon that you like. I tend to like ones that are about 1 inch thick for this, and we're going to cut them in 5-inch strips. Now to make this bow, I'm going to make a little ring and just hot glue that right together. While that dries, with the other strand of ribbon, we're going to make a little V, and we're going to make sure that the pattern is on the front side, so you kind of do a little pinch in the center there to do that. Using a small piece of pipe cleaner, I'm going to go ahead and wrap these 2 pieces of ribbon together, and we're just going to pinch them in the center and get that pipe cleaner all the way around that ribbon. Next, I'm going to dovetail the tails of this bow. And once that is complete, we're going to cut about 1.5 inches worth of ribbon off of the spool, and we're going to fold that into thirds, and we'll hot glue that little piece of ribbon all the way around to cover up that pipe cleaner. Next, I grab a wood star that I got at the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to use antique wax and stain that star. Once the star is stained, we're going to use some Waverly chalk paint in the color white, and we're just going to dry brush that star. Next, I'm going to do the same thing and do like a whitewash look on our little block. And now I'm going to grab some polyfill, and I don't need very much, just a small handful. And if you don't have that, you could use like a cotton ball or something else instead. Time for the fun part, putting the whole tree together. We're starting with the polyfill, and I'm going to make like a donut shape that we will then hot glue to the top of this block. Now let's put our tree into the hole of the block so that it will stand up. And I use a little skewer to help me out. So let's hot glue the star to the top of the tree. This craft is a great craft that you can do for a Christmas crafting party. All you need to do is prep your blocks ahead of time and make sure you have all the parts and everything ready to go for them so that they can put these trees together. And here is our happy little snow tree. Isn't she so pretty?